Joliet. We have a very exciting speaker today and who has a very exciting announcement. And as you know, the Canal is a huge part of Joliet's history and probably the reason why Joliet is here today. So without going on too long, I'm going to introduce Mike Brick, who's our development director here at the museum, who will introduce our speaker. Take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Greg. Again, we want to thank you guys for coming out. It's a great crowd, probably more than we expected today for Wayne's presentation. And we're happy to host this presentation. Anytime the museum is approached with a discovery or something like that of a unique or historical significance, we're happy to partner up and be a host to a presentation like this. And when Wayne approached us, Heather and myself and Greg, with this discovery, I think you'll see this once you see the presentation, we were taken aback. We thought this could be something that could really be moved upon. It's right in our backyard in the I&M Canal, so I'm not going to steal Wayne's thunder here, but I want to introduce Wayne Barnett, who will be giving the presentation today. Wayne.
No. As a Marine, the Master Gunny understands I know how to speak loud. My name is Wayne Barnett, and I've been asked several times already, what is my connection with this historical site? The connection is I'm a boater. I own a sailboat, and that boat is occasionally kept in the Rockdale area at some property leased by Jim Riggs, and I would store the boat there in the winter. Over a 6 or 7 year period, as I would work on the boat, I would go down Route 6, park my car, get up on a steel walkway, and walk out to the barge where my boat was stored. And each time I did, I noticed a couple of pieces of junk laying around, all right? And each time I noticed it, it got more and more interesting. Until one day, I said, wow, there's something going on there. I talked to Jim Riggs. Jim told me a couple of things. It escalated. I began taking photographs of the pieces of things we discovered. I put those into a book, that red book behind Mike. I brought it in here to the museum, and I showed it to some people, and they said, holy cow, you've got something. I then took it to several other people, including Sandy Vasco in Lockport. She got very excited about what I brought, and it escalated further. I went to my friend Richard Fredrickson, and we had lunch one day with Bob Navarro. The three of us got excited, and so one of the things we're going to be talking about today, in addition to the discovery, is the fact that we intend to make a documentary of the discovery and the reclamation of what I'm about to show you. We've already shot, thanks to Dick Schuster on the camera, we've already shot, what, Dick, 2 hours of video? At least 2 hours of video in its pristine condition, if you dare use that word, as well as the removal of one of the major components. With that in mind, we're going to show you what we truly believe could be one of the most historical sites ever along the I&M Canal. Mike? We have 3 objectives today. The first objective is simply to bring attention to the site in hopes that someone, somewhere in this area is going to say, wow, my great-great-grandfather worked on that thing, and we have some photographs. Or I know this, I know this, I know this person. We desperately need information on this site because there are many, many mysteries surrounding it. The second objective is to solicit volunteers to restore this site in the future. It's going to take some work. There's a lot of work to be done. There are at least 5 major projects that we've uncovered thus far. And I'm hoping that we can solicit a volunteer to head each project because it's going to be overwhelming for one individual. The third objective is to investigate funding. This is not going to be done for free, but our objective is to turn it into a free historical site that draws people from all over the state to a very, very significant site, a very significant visitor center. Heather has been over to the site with me, and she understands the draw that we could possibly have for downtown Joliet. All right, what have we found so far? First of all, this is what we're talking about. Okay, folks? Let me see if I can make the pointer work. Right here is the deep waterway Brandon Lock. I'm really good with this, aren't I? That's Brandon Road. And this is Route 6. All right, I hope everyone is basically oriented on where we are. We are going to be talking about this area right there, and just to the right of it, right there, that is I&M Canal Lock number 5. This site has been hidden in plain sight for 100 years. The next area we're going to talk about is right here. This is an area that's leased by Jim Riggs, and Jim has been instrumental and very cooperative in helping with our efforts to develop all this. Here's what we found so far, and we have not even begun to look closely. As mentioned, we have found a totally ignored lock number 5, one of 17 locks on the I&M Canal that date back to 1848. Each lock dropped the waterway approximately 10 feet as it came through. The remnants of a 19th century wooden mast crane. The significance of that crane cannot be overemphasized because none, zero, seem to exist anywhere along the I&M Canal, and apparently there were numerous cranes along the canal from Chicago all the way down to LaSalle. The site, which again is hidden in plain sight, was a goods landing and off-goods landing, on-goods landing for the Will County area. This is where I&M Canal boats tied up, offloaded goods, unloaded goods from the Joliet area for distribution elsewhere. Remnants of 3 19th century wooden I&M Canal boats. Correction, 2.5. Okay, 2.5. And finally, an intact 1930s deep waterway cargo vessel. Now, while the cargo vessel is not part of the I&M Canal heritage, it nonetheless is historic, and trust me, it's not going anywhere. All right? All right, let's first talk about the lock and everything. The area you see right here outlined in yellow with the V, and that's I&M Canal Lock number 5, as it exists today. What we would like to do with this, Mike, this is what the canal looks like before and after. A great mystery surrounds this canal. I was hoping Perry Smith, the assistant lockmaster for the canal, was going to be here today because he has been, so cooperative in our efforts to restore this area. We'll talk about that in just a second. The top 2 pictures are what the lock looked like in 1932. This is when the original lock number 5, depending on what historical document we read, the original lock number 5 was 600 meters upstream. And when they built the deep waterway, it was destroyed. So in conjunction with building the deep waterway, Brandon Road lock. They reconstructed lock number 5. Why? Why would they do that? They reconstructed it of concrete. And you see here, that is a completely reconstructed downstream gate, including the 2 big wooden poles. That's how the locks were open. 2 guys got on each pole and walked it around to open the gates. There was an identical gate at the far end. This was a shot made just before the gates were installed. The gates have disappeared. The 2 lower shots are what exists today. The upstream gate has been now replaced with a concrete one. One document I read said that was to prevent barges from trying to enter that. But it's only 30 feet wide, so it's pretty tough to get an 80-foot wide deep waterway in there. Mike? All right, back to this again now. This is what it currently looks like. This is a heavily wooded area. I mean, so heavily wooded you can't walk through it. We would like to see that turned into a park. There are similar parks next to the locks as we go south. There's one in Shanahan, down in LaSalle, as you go downstream. Here's the interesting thing. Perry, the lockmaster, got very excited when I proposed to him that maybe the Army Corps of Engineers, who owns that property, could deed it or sell it to someone to have it restored. I immediately thought of the Will County Forest Preserve. That would be a perfect project for them to take on to turn it into a park, all right? There's no parking along here, but Perry has even suggested that we could do that. This is what we think it could look like, all right? And so you can understand the little white dots, it's hard to tell, those are picnic tables, all right? And the little black dots in front of them, those are cookers. Along the edge of the canal, those are kiosks with explanations of the lock and its history and everything else. And hopefully explaining why it was rebuilt out of poured concrete. Perry has said he believes we could get parking spaces along here where you see the cars, build a little walkway across. That's what we're hoping to do with that project. Mike? All right, the next thing we want to talk about is the one that caught my attention, and that is the remnants of a 19th century derrick crane. The derrick crane exists in this area right here. We're now going to talk about all that area. Okay, Mike? This is a close-up. And if you look, see those 2 poles? That's the mast and the boom of the derrick crane. Now, these were originally discovered by Jim many years ago, and they were off to the right, sunken, and Jim tried to remove them with a truck, a pickup truck or a tow truck, and not knowing how much they actually weighed, it turns out they're 8,000 pounds, dragged them that far. There are other remnants here that you're going to see in a moment as well. Right about there, you're going to see another component. Right across the walkway, you're going to see another one. Mike? All right, this is a derrick crane. This one is actually on the I&M Canal. This photo taken, who knows, 1850, 1860. They're called derricks because of the main support in the center, the boom out. We have another shot of one that's a little easier to explain. The components here are important because we have found almost every single component. That's what's exciting. The pole straight up and down is called the mast. The pole that goes out is called the boom. As you can see, these are made of wood. You would call those things pulleys up there. The correct term is shiv, all right? Around the bottom, right below the arrows, right there, is a circular geared wheel. That's called a bull wheel. And it is geared, and the steam engine powers it so that when it lifts its load, it can swing the boom around and drop it. Below the bull wheel is the support plate. Okay, here's what we found. Again, we're looking at this area right here. Mike will go in close now, again. All right, here's what we discovered. And I walked by this stuff 6 years in a row, not really recognizing what it was. But we now understand. Up here in the upper left-hand corner, you see one of the masts and the boom laying in the water. Again, the second one. The third slide at the top, that's a base plate. That base plate is about 8 feet in diameter. Here's another shot of the base plate here. The shot in the middle, that is the bull wheel. That bull wheel is 8 foot in diameter, weighs several tons, and as you can see, is mostly buried. To the far right is one of the supports, we believe, for the guide wires for the derrick crane. Lower left-hand corner, that's one of the shivs we have found. Lower bottom, that's one of hundreds of feet of various size cable running up to 1.5 inches in diameter. Far bottom right corner, that is a well feed pipe that we believe fed fresh water to the steam engine that drove this thing. Mike? All right. About a year ago, we had some volunteers come in who own cranes. One of the fellows is with us now. And we went over there, and with Dick videotaping, we hauled the mast out of the water. We snapped an 8,000-pound sling trying to get it out. We eventually went to cranes. We went to chains. We sunk the crane up to its axles trying to pull this stuff out of there. We finally did, and we moved it. The first thing we discovered was, gee, we don't have a mast and boom. We have a double mast, which really made it unique until we started looking at it more closely, and Heather was involved in this. If you look at the bottom center, the bottom right, you can see plates that clearly attach the bottom of it into one piece. But if you look at this shot here and the one in the upper right-hand corner, they are not attached in this particular case. They're touching, but they're not attached. So the first question became, wow, wouldn't that make it very unstable to have it attached at the bottom and not at the top? Yes, it would. So here's what we discovered. Closer examination of the plate, you can see in the top center and the lower center up the holes in which the clevis pins went through, where the two plates slid together, clevis pin went through, so it could work like this. For some reason, when the useful life of the crane was over, they decided rather than destroy it, let's use it as a platform base. So we believe it was welded together. You can't see it, but along the left edge of one of those poles, incidentally, they're 33 feet long, which is the perfect distance for swinging goods from the landing to the shore. So we need to investigate. Hopefully that's, if we get the word out, someone will come up and say, hey, I remember that crane, and I have a photo of it or something. But we do believe now, we do have the mast and the boom. Okay, Mike? All right. Now the cargo landing site. All through the mid to late 19th century and early 20th century, the I&M Canal was active. And there were landing sites all the way from Chicago to LaSalle. This is how the goods were moved. This site, we believe, served Will County. Horse-drawn carriages pulled up along the road right on the other side of that walkway right there. That's a steel walkway. The barges would pull up right there, and the site ran from about right there all the way over to there. It was built of, think of railroad ties, timbers all tied together with big long iron bolts. And the outgoing goods were staged on one side, the incoming goods were staged on the other side. Mike? This is what a close-up shows there. Upper left-hand corner, that's the steel walkway. If you look carefully, you will see narrow gauge railroad tracks. Those narrow gauge railroad tracks carried a trolley, hand-push trolley, that would be used to ease in the loading and offloading of goods. Of course, we found all the rest of these parts there too. The shot on the upper right, that's a shot beneath the walkway, and it's hard to tell, but you can see some of the original railroad tie construction. In the lower left-hand corner, this is our greatest guide to the size of the platform. It's 180 feet wide on both sides of the steel walkway. And these rods held together all of the big ties. The rods exist. The ties rotted away. But they clearly defined where everything was. Mike? Again, this is what it looks like today. And right along here on the left side, that is the remnants of the park, of the I&M Canal Park. So you can see this is within 100 meters of lock number 5. Mike? We think this is probably what it looked like when it was done. All right? One side for offloading, one side for unloading, and right up there you can see my tremendous artistic talent in putting the crane there. Okay? What you see at the top here, right there, if this is turned into a visitor site, there's no parking. We certainly can't have people parking on Route 6 and crossing. That's a busy road. So, what you're looking at there is access to this landing site via a walkway built along the top of the concrete retaining wall of the deep waterway. And it leads right along there and over to it, which means people can still park over at the lock number 5 and walk over to visit this. Okay, that's what we're thinking. It could be restored to that. One of the more interesting things is if we look at some of the earlier slides, you can see there's a lot of muck and water. And I wish that Perry were here. Excuse me while I sit briefly and let this leg wake up again. If Perry were here, almost joking with him, I said one day, you know, Perry, when we restore this site, a lot of the site is about 6-10 inches underwater, and it's going to be tough to work on it. It'd be nice if you could lower the water level. And he said, how much do you want it lowered? And I said, you're joking. And he says, no, how much do you want it lowered? And I said, wow, could we lower it a foot or two? And he says, uh-huh. I said, how do you do that? And he goes, and he drops the waterway from Brandon to Lockport by a foot, 2 feet. The whole thing. He just drops it. And he said you have to coordinate it a little bit to make sure we don't have barge traffic come through. But that's the extent of the cooperation we're getting from people when he's willing to do something like that. All right? Okay, now we move on to the canal boats. We have here 2.5 canal boats. There's one of them, okay? There's the second one, and off to your left, you see 1/2 of a third one. Now, these, to our knowledge, there are no existing intact I&M Canal boats. So we have our opportunity here with 3 of them. Mike? Here's a closer shot. What has been done is the boats have sunk. The I&M Canal boats are sitting on the bottom. The water right there is about 6 feet deep, Jim, is that right? About 6 feet deep. The canal boat, we know, has settled into the muck. We don't know how far. But the top of the iron rods you see used to be the top of the boat. And built on top of it now is a green wood platform so they could be usable. Mike? Here's another shot. Again, Mike. Here's a close-up. You can see the iron rods that held the boat together. The interesting thing is the wood in the water is quite intact for being 150 years old. And we believe the contributing factor is the fact that that canal was pretty filthy with oil and grease. It impregnated the wood and saved it. Mike? This is the 1/2 boat. And if you look carefully, that black thing right behind the arrow, and you see more of them walking across. These are L-shaped plates that come out and go up. We're not quite sure their purpose, but it's conceivable that the boat was built in 2 halves, brought together, and big long bolts ran between them and pulled them together. Why? No idea. No idea. Okay. Now, finally, the last bit of what we found. I've shown you 4 findings so far. The last one has been in plain sight, and that's the deep waterway cargo barge, which is this puppy right here. All right, Mike. You've probably seen this 100 times driving along Route 6. All right? The cupola up on top was added later. The story behind this, from what Jim has told me and what people have told Jim, this is a 1930s era cargo barge. It is much too large to fit on the I&M, and it was brought into Joliet, left to be off unloaded, and it's not powered, so it's either pushed or pulled. The driving vessel goes up river and comes back from Chicago to pick it up. In the meantime, it developed a leak and it sank. It's resting on the bottom in about 3 feet of water. It ain't going nowhere, okay? So, since we can't move it, I'm thinking, while it's not I&M history, it is still historic. And it too could be restored. Here's a back shot of it. And you can see sliding doors. Those were cargo doors. They slid aside and totally opened up the cargo space. I know Jim has been all over that thing. I have been all over that thing. We can't find a single number designating who it belonged to, who built it, what year it is, anything. Okay, so there's another mystery. Mike? There's another final shot of it. Jim Riggs, who, again, leases all this property, has indicated that the cupola could come off, you know, and we could restore that as best possible. That could be part of the site as well. Mike? Okay, so that's what we have, a discovery of what we believe could really, truly be the most historic site along the I&M Canal. And think of what a draw it could be for the Joliet area. Last slide, Mike. So, that's why you're here. So, to see if you can help us make this a dream. And if anyone has questions or comments or anything, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Mayor.
Have you thought about going back to who had the site previous? I know at one time John Simpson had it. He was a local contractor. It was his. That he traded. I don't know. Who owns it?
Get that man's name and number and quote. That's what we're looking for, Mayor. I'd never heard that.
Yeah, John Simpson was him. Then my cousin had it for a while, and I don't know, Jim, who owns the site? Corps of Engineer?
No, Department of Conservation.
Okay, but I know at one time John, and he lives up in Michigan. I can find out from his daughter is here. Yeah.
That's our goal, to get information on the site.
Maybe he can take you back farther.
Yeah, someone in this area knows something about this site. Now, I've been over with Perry at the Deep Waterway site, and Heather was with me. They have thousands and thousands of official government photographs of the construction of the Deep Waterway and the Brandon Lock. 2 or 3 words mentioning the I&M Canal. But nonetheless, they have boxes of contracts let in 1932. And one of the things that we believe may exist is the contract to build lock number 5 reconstructed of concrete. Again, why? We can't figure that out, but that's one of the mysteries. Any other questions? Anything? No idea. One of the things that we would be looking for is a fund to discover that. What do you call it, Mike? There's a term, a funding to find how much it would cost to fund it. There are grants available. Yeah, grants. Yeah, we want to look at federal grants and state grants and local grants. Anyone who can support this. This will not be a short-term project, I can see this being a 5-10 year project, But in the end, I think its worthiness is pretty self-sufficient, pretty obvious. So, yes, sir.
It seems to me that one of the first things to build would be an observation deck to show this thing developing. That's a tourist attraction right there. Just to watch the reconstruction, the development, talk about it. People will go by and mention funding and so forth.
Well, one of the things that we are doing, well, we hadn't thought of that, is Dick Schuster and the gentleman behind you, Richard Fredrickson, and I are shooting a documentary of this from the get-go. One of the things that we made sure of is before anything was touched, we videotaped it. Absolutely nothing was touched until we got everything on film. So we will have that. I guess that's a possibility. It's certainly something we can put in the, hey, how about this file,
Well, then how about archaeological organizations? Would they be interested in that?
Yes. Every organization we have chatted with thus far, and Heather, you know better than I how many different ones we've talked to. And what was it we filed for? Historical status that makes us grant worthy. Did we ever hear back on that? Not yet. Okay. I had hoped that Sandy Vasco would be here, who is director of the Will County Historical Society in Lockport. I've met with her several times, but she has some health problems. And she has opened her archives to us. And I've gone through, I can't tell you how many books I've gone through hoping to find stuff. And yes, sir.
What about who owns the property in the water, like the boats, and is that a different kind of
Jim leases 60 feet from the wall out. It's actually owned by the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Conservation. Jim can explain a lot more of that than I can,
Because I guess maybe if you run into snags with the property, can you get the mast and the derrick crane and the boats at least out of there and potentially somewhere else?
Absolutely. As mentioned, as shown, we have removed the mast and the boom, and they are now in a safe area. The next step is we are going to go in and we're going to pull the bull wheel. That is not a simple task. We've got to go in with a mini backhoe, and we've got to dig it up enough that we can get a crane sitting on. This gentleman over here can explain it better than I what it's going to be, but that we think that bull wheel is probably 5 ton, at least 5 tons, and we're going to have a crane that's going to have to boom out almost to its limit, which means it can't lift 5 tons. We're going to have to dig it loose, chain it, and drag it in. Drag it out of there until we can get it close enough that we can pick it up, swing it out onto a flatbed, take it over to where the 2 masts are. Then we're going to pull the base plate. The base plate will be easier. It's not nearly as heavy, and it's closer to the street. Once that is done, here's one of the exciting things. One of the first slides I showed you said, this is what we have found so far. Imagine 100 years, 150 years of loading, offloading goods. How often do you think those cranes drop stuff? And where do you think that stuff went? We're going to go out there with metal detectors. And after we remove 500 or 600 feet of steel cable, we're going to find all kinds of things. We absolutely know it. And when our friend Perry drops the water level by 2 feet, now we can excavate all this stuff and start digging in there. We need volunteers for that. Incidentally, this is Joliet. Right across the street, Road 6, that's Rockdale. That's Rockdale. And an interesting story, not knowing it was Rockdale, I walked into Rockdale to the mayor's office, and with my book of pictures and everything, and sat it down, and I started talking about the excitement, and the guy I was talking to went just like this. I really don't have the time for you. Don't let the door hit you in the butt when you leave. And I said, thanks, I'm out of here. And came right down here to the museum, and that's when the excitement started.
Wayne, have you thought of getting the Joliet Area Historical Society involved?
Yes. Actually, was someone invited from them, Mike?
Yeah, Virginia, there's a few people. Virginia's Health is
Yeah.
an issue getting here, but they're aware of it. Hopefully our mayor
Yeah.
contacted them, so there's
We had invites out for several politicians. We had hoped they'd be here. State senators and U.S. senators. But yeah, we're hopeful. We've got to make people aware that the site exists because in the long-term plan for Joliet, Mayor, we think this could be a significant contributor. You know, so
I will get you Simpson's name.
thank you so much, so much. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Riggs asked me to kind of say something real quick. I'm Mr. Thompson, Boy Scout Troop 25. He does an awful lot for youth, and our Boy Scout troop has gone and stayed aboard his barge, and we kind of have a party time there and watch movies. He's discussed with me about having Boy Scouts participate. There is an archaeological merit badge. They do at summer camp where they map things out, string it, and measurements and pictures, height, depth. They do it all at camp, but it's on a really small scale. This could be the opportunity to maybe do something for the youth, and over 5 to 10 years, we're not talking a small group. You're talking about doing something for a lot of kids for a lot of years. And to be able to maybe get universities involved, Now you have youth that are getting close to the age of going to a college, are now working with that college. So it's not just a small thing of, well, I'm going to dig up this little piece of steel and hand it over. It mirrors off in a lot of different ways. So, like I say, we've gone down to his place quite a bit of times, and Boy Scouts have to visit a government facility in order to get rank advancement. What better thing to visit than the locks? It's run by the government. So that gets signed off in their book right away. And this archaeological dig, I think, could be, however it needs to be set up, is something that we'd have to do with Rainbow Council and maybe national. Maybe they want to set an age group to it, maybe 15 and older, or that's something that would have to be discussed, and other legalities. But that doesn't mean that they can't push a button on a camera, or maybe learn the logistics of and take notes and measurements. Doesn't necessarily mean they have to do the dig for safety reasons. So he just wanted me to kind of mention that the Boy Scouts could probably be a big help to this, and could last for a lot of years for youth.
Heather, would you come up here for a second?
That's gonna hurt.
No. The other Heather.
I didn't think you'd step on your toes.
I wanted Heather just for a moment to share with them the idea you came up with when we met with Perry, the lockmaster, and we watched them lock boats through the deep waterway, and your idea that came out.
It was fascinating because I haven't done that probably since I was in grade school, and they were very polite. You could walk right in there, and they have all the TVs and monitors up, and they said they could allow you to actually push the button. I mean, I'm excited as an adult to push the button and watch the lock system work. I mean, I can imagine children's groups doing that, and just again trying to engage the children in school different programs with coming to a museum, actually seeing a lock physically work, seeing the Army Corps of Engineers. Because they're not going to know that, yes, it's the Army Corps of Engineers. Well, what do they do? What do how they operate a lock system? What is a lock? I mean, they're going to have all these great questions, and just a way to kind of get the school groups just involved with things in their local community. I think they'd have a really good time doing that, and then seeing all the interpretive cameras there.
We believe that there's probably no more than 100 locks, maybe half that, in the entire United States. And we have an opportunity here for people to see something work that the I&M Canal, I didn't go into the significance of it, but let it be said that it was the single most important project in the history of the United States because it tied the East Coast to the Gulf of Mexico. And the namesake of this city, Joliet, in 1621, along with Father Marquette, were hired by the governor of Toronto, Canada, and was hired to chase the Mississippi to see if it emptied into the Gulf of Mexico or into the Pacific Ocean. Well, they discovered that it turned and went down to the Gulf, so they turned around and they came back up. Louis Joliet, whose statue is in the library yard, found that by making a portage of only about 2.5 miles over some high ground, moved from the Des Plaines River into the Chicago River, and went back to the governor in Canada and said, hey, dig a trench 2 miles long, 3 miles long, and all of a sudden Lake Michigan is hooked into the Gulf of Mexico. That's an incredible discovery. It went from 1621 until 1848 before the canal was actually built and opened. And that's a whole different story on how that occurred. But it is that significant. So now here we have a canal that would give the opportunity for children to see it. Okay, guys, right here. Have any of you ever seen a lock work where boats go through it? You have, all right? Pretty exciting stuff, huh? And very few people in this country get to do that, okay? And how would you like to go up there, see the boats pull into the lock, and then you draw straws to see who gets to empty the lock, okay? It's real hard, takes a lot of muscle. Let me see you do this. That's what it takes, okay? And that's what Heather's talking about. And they were very, very agreeable to bringing tour groups up there, which could be tied in to this whole thing. As you can see, I get excited about the potential 5-10 years down the road of what this could actually be. All right? If nothing else, thank you for coming. Right here, INM Canal information at yahoo.com. Anything you learn, I don't care what it is, send me an email, and we'll follow it up, okay? And Mayor, thank you for that contribution.
And I'll say this, being that I was a part of helping move the mass and everything, I will donate the rest of my time to whatever is needed to do that.
What's your nickname?
Everybody calls me Dude.
Dude owns a trucking company, and Dude and my friend Tad, who owns a crane, they volunteered their time. They came down. We spent an entire day with Dick Schuster filming, pulling those two 8,000-pound poles out of the muck and mud. And I'll tell you what, there are some tough times there, and one of these days we'll show you the video of that, okay? Once again, thank you people so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Before everyone goes, first of all, excellent. I think this thing's really got legs, and I think that's represented by how many different groups of people are in the room right now. And speaking of the canal, we have one more little thing. Chris Book from the Canal Alliance wants to get up and tell you about it. It's a historic project, a book that relates to the canal, and they're undergoing a Kickstarter project right now.
Good.
So she's going to take a minute of your time to talk
30
about
seconds.
that. 30 seconds.
Just 30
All right.
seconds, it's quick.
Okay.
So, the fact is, the Illinois-Michigan Canal National Heritage Corridor, as you know, is the nation's very first in the country. It encompasses the CBB, and they're trying to work with an illustrator to produce a book about the IM Canal. It's called Passage to Chicago, A Journey on the Illinois-Michigan Canal in 1860. And what they're trying to do is get community support on a site called Kickstarter.com. So if anybody's interested in helping to get that project moving,
I'm just getting you on mic.
if anybody's interested in getting that project,
I'm
giving it a kickstart.
married.
Giving that project a kickstart. It's Kickstarter.com. The book is Passage to Chicago. The illustrator has printed a book before. He's in production now, and they're trying to raise funds by June 1st. It's a 60-day deadline. So they're trying to get the community involved. I know a lot of you have been familiar with it through the Canal Corridor Association and the Canal Alliance Congress. Greg was there as well. So it's an incredible book. It'll be an exquisitely illustrated, like 100 pictures and things, and they're trying to get history lovers and historic preservation people involved in making the book a reality.
Very cool.
So
Yeah, I've seen some of the drawings.
So thank you for that.
It's really cool. And why don't we'll put it on our Facebook tomorrow.
Perfect. Perfect. So
Hook up
thanks
with us
for
on
that.
Facebook, Joliet Area Historical Museum. I don't know, Wayne, do you have a Facebook page or any place like that?
No, do not.
Website, anything?
No, that's one of the plans, but nothing yet.
So the
So
LaSalle
find
Canal,
the
yeah.
museum on Facebook. And
Right.
we'll all-
You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep
We'll
in
make sure
mind,
you get what we
people,
did.
my presentations until today used dual slide projectors with a fade unit, you know, any of you remember those things? So,
The LaSalle Canal Boat is also a great place in the meantime to go for information. We have a lot of historians that can hook you up as well. So that's kind of, they're partnering with the Canal Corridor Association, and LaSalle Canal Boat are partnering with Tom Wilcoxon, who is the author, and he's actually got like a 60-second little video on Kickstarter that explains what he's trying to do. He, like you, has been trying to tell the story for a long time, so we can help make it happen. Thank you.
thank you.